Welcome back, crew. We're a bit late, but we are still focusing on Dragon Age as our game of the 2 months, we'll call it. And today we are getting into the meat of the system. We're going to show you how to play the Dragon Age system by Green Ronin and give you a little bit of insight into Green Ronin's overall age system that encompasses Dragon Age, Modern Age, Fantasy Age, and there's probably some others I'm forgetting right now. So let's dive right into it. One of the big things I'll say with this system, definitely check out our video. I'll throw a link in there too for going through and categorizing different systems, at least in my view of tabletop RPGs, from like narrative ones all the way to the crunchy ones. With this system, I think it fits in a very similar spot to 13th Age, no relation to the Age system, but a very kind of good mix between narrative as well as mechanics. But one of the real nice things with it are the mechanics are very straightforward. This is one that you can kind of pick it up quickly and get into the story and get into kind of what you want to do while still having mechanics to support you and still having that kind of make sure that the mechanics are influencing the story as well. I know sometimes people with the narrative ones can feel like the mechanics aren't having their place. This system is going to be one of the ones that does a really good job of balancing that. Yeah, let's kick it off. One of the big things I will say for this system, you don't really need a ton of things. For the system as a player, you just need three D6s. Two of those D6s could be the any color you want, but you want to make sure you specify one of the D6s as your dragon dice. Because with this system, whenever you make a check, what they call ability test, you're going to roll 3d6. You're going to compare that to the target number, and we're going to go into the target number piece in a bit. But one of the big things to keep an eye out for is when you roll those 3d6, one of those is going to be your dragon dice. And that dragon dice is going to determine stunt points, determine ties, and a few other things, which we'll get into as we get a little closer to that piece. But one of the things I wanted to make sure you knew is just what you needed to get started, other than a character sheet in the book. Yeah, very easy on that piece. This system, like say other systems, when you do make a check, it's going to be an ability test. Typically, you're going to be comparing this against a target number. That you can also do opposed checks as well. With the 3d6, you're going to be adding in your ability score number to it, as well as your focus if you have one. So, for instance, if you do have a focus, let's say you're trying to do like a lore check, and you've got one of those lore focuses on there too, you'd be able to add the ability in there along with two from your focus. The focus always grants a bonus of two to whatever that check may be. And this will be one you work with your game master on to see if you can fit that focus into the situation at hand. But overall, pretty simple on that side. You just really roll. You get to see if you come out with it, and then keep track of what your dragon dice does. So, with that too, stunt points are a really cool thing with this system, and we're going to go in depth on them a little bit later in this chapter. What they are is you earn them when you roll that 3d6. Typically, it's going to be on combat checks, but sometimes you may have stunt abilities that can be utilized for non-combat depending on your class and things you picked up. But if you roll doubles, you get a number of stunt points equal to the number your dragon dice roll. So it's really well, you want to make sure if you're playing in person to have, if you've got two white dice, have the black dice as your dragon die, just so you know exactly what is coming up there, because that's going to be very important for both off determining degrees of success. So, like if you succeeded in sneaking away from the guards, the game master will look at that dragon dice, and on a one, maybe you left clues to where you went to. Six, you disappeared without a trace. So that dragon dice is very important from the stunt points, degrees of success, determining ties. There's a lot that goes into that. So make sure you keep track of that. But yeah, the stunt points, we'll get to those a little bit later in the combat section, but they allow you to do cool things and just really break up the flow of combat if you're able to earn them. One thing with those as well, and I think they detail this in the other section, but if you do earn stunt points, you've got to utilize them right as you earn them. They're not one that you can typically be stockpiled. I'm not sure if there's abilities you get later in the game that allow you to kind of break that rule, but that is the general rule for the system. Uh, Biggest thing too, we've already went over the basic test, but they also have composed test as well. So like let's say you were arm wrestling somebody for an easy example, rather than your game master setting a target number, you would roll against either their player or the game master as the NPC and compete and see whose score comes out higher. Dragon dice determining ties. Also with that too, with this Gives a pretty good range for your target numbers. This is one that's not going to change too much as a player's level. So this is a great table to have in reference as you're going through your game. With routine checks being a 7, and remember you're rolling 3d6 and hopefully have an ability to get onto it. So unless you've just been cursed by the dice gods, you should be able to hit that 7 pretty easy. And then 9 possible, where you're going to need at least a +3 modifier and 3 6s to hit it. So fairly straightforward on that side. I mean, it's not really, as I said, the system is very straightforward. The mechanics are easy to pick up on determining the successes and how things flow. One thing I'll touch on there, we already went over the degrees of success, but just really make sure you're paying attention to your dragon dice. If you're new to the system, or dragon die, I should say, if you're new to the system, make sure you mark that because this is going to be a big piece for the game master and kind of you for determining how well you did at your particular check. So with that, they go into a little bit of the timepieces. The big thing we're going to focus on for this, though, because it gives you the kind of typical RPG advice for time, but we're going to break it down when we get into combat. So one of the big things, game masters, if you're used to the systems that have sprung out of D&D in the 6 second round, I think most of the systems I played usually have that. This one's a little bit different. It's a 15-second round. So keep that in mind as you're going through and kind of planning out your adventures and just kind of keeping out your time checks because that's a little different and I could see you defaulting back. But yeah, with that, so let's say you're going into a combat. We're going to take you through step by step how to get into combat, how to attack, and how to resolve the combats. This one, very easy. You're going to roll your dex. It's going to have the initiative focus. So if you do have an initiative focus on your character, if you've earned that focus, you'll get a +2 to it. We basically just make a dex roll, 3d6 plus your dex, and then basically highest to lowest acting first. Pretty similar, very standard on the kind of the TTRPG side. One big thing I'll point out again, ties go to the dragon dice. That's consistent throughout the system. But I wanted to make sure we hit that just so people knew. So with that, that goes over the encounter pieces. You kind of counters fairly straightforward. You go through and fight until either one side is dead, one side gives up, the objective's completed. Typical TTRPG fare, but we're going to go through and show you what actions you have available in combat and how those flow through. So with this system, you can take either one major action and a minor action, or two minor actions. Now, with that, they give you a lot of different things you can do with your turn. This is one of the cool pieces with it. I said it's a very narrative system, and the base mechanics are very easy. But one of the things I liked with combat is how many different options they give you to kind of make it unique and kind of keep it from just making every turn either attack or cast a spell. So I thought that was cool. So with those, we're going to touch on the major actions, then we'll dive into the minor actions. Remember, you can either get one major, one minor, or two minor per turn. So with that, you can do an all-out attack. That's going to basically be a major action. You're going to be able to do +1 damage, but due to going all out for it, you're going to have a -1 to defense. Charge, you can go half speed. So you can move half your speed and then get to attack, and you get a +1 to your attack roll, which is nice. You can kind of condense your actions down a little bit with that. Defend, you're going to get +2 to your defense score. Heal, this one's kind of cool on this one. So with this, you're going to have a target number of 11. So remember, when you get that 3d6, you're going to have to hit that TN. And you must have bandages. But basically, if you succeed on that, you can heal their dragon die result plus cunning. And you can only, if you heal somebody up, they must take damage before you can heal them again. With that too, you also get a regular melee attack. Nothing too crazy on that portion. They just have to be within range for you. There's no pluses or minuses to it. Same thing with ranged attack. And then if you ever need to run, you can dash and move up to double your speed utilizing a major action. So fairly straightforward for those, but they give you a lot of different things you can do for your majors. And we'll hit on a couple of the big minors too. Some of these are self-explanatory, so I'm just going to hit the ones I think add something cool to the game. So aim is a really nice one. So this is a minor action. Each turn you get one major, one minor. With that, you can get a +1 to your attack roll. So if you needed to have an attack to really make sure it hits, you could aim, and then this it's called aim, but it works for both melee and ranged attacks. And if you really have a turn where this hit is critical, you could aim and then charge somebody and get like a +2 to your attack roll. So I thought that was kind of cool to really up your chances there and give you some cool tools to work with. With that too, you've got guard up. So this is a little bit what I wanted to take a moment to focus on because it gives you a +1 or +2 to defense, and you're probably wondering how it's different from defend. The biggest difference is defend gives you a +2 straight. There's no drawbacks. If you do guard up, if you take that +1 or +2, you're going to minus your choice from all of your other rolls. So something just to keep in mind on that portion. You can also move, just moving up to your regular speed without doing anything extra with it. You can prepare, utilize something to kind of execute at the end of your turn. You can also press the attack, which allow you to, if you hit somebody, you don't have to do damage, you just have to hit them. You can basically set that action to chase them if they decide to move. I thought that's kind of a cool one there. Just gotta set yourself up and be ready to move. You also get stand firm, which will just kind of allow you to be a little bit better suited in case somebody tries to move you with an effect or run manually on that side. Yeah, straightforward of those. The majors and minors on that side, they are not hard to adjudicate, but they give you some fun flavor and some options to keep that combat interesting. The next big thing we'll touch on is making attacks. System's pretty easy. 3d6 plus, if it's a ranged weapon, it's going to be plus perception, a strength, melee weapon plus strength, and basically you're going to be going up against the target's defense target number. If you roll it above it and you're good, you'll be able to hit. With that too, so for damage, I said you'll roll with the damage plus your strength or perception for bows, and then you're going to subtract enemy armor unless penetration is used for the weapon. So if you're using the arrow and the person, just for instance, has a enemy armor of a 4, you would just minus that 4 out typically, or if you're using something with penetration, you would just ignore the 4, give them straight damage on it. So pretty straightforward on those pieces too. As I said, this one's the mechanics are very easy to pick up, but it'll still allow you some depth. With that as well, we talk on what happens when you actually get hurt, start to get into the dying ranges. So dying with this system, you're going to be dying if you hit zero. And if you hit 0 HP, you're going to have two plus your con score rounds until you die. So basically, on those rounds, you can't really do much. You're stuck until somebody heals you, or you hit that last round, and then you finally pass away. With this system too, they do have a coup de grace system built into it. So if somebody gets near you and does a coup de grace, it's automatic. If you're melee, it's automatic. You're dead. You're gone. If it's a ranged one, the ranged attack has to hit a target number of 10, and they can take you out. So one of those ones, depending on how the game master plays, it can be pretty deadly because they can just take you out even if you're on your first dying round. Also, too, if you are fighting somebody that you want to keep alive, you can pull killing blows, and it's one of those ones you don't have to call it ahead of time. You just basically, if you're gonna the blow's gonna kill, you just say, "I want to keep him alive." One thing to keep in mind, though, is the character regains consciousness in 2d6 minutes. So have a game master roll that out and see kind of when they'll come back alive or come back into consciousness. Yes, let's get into the stunt system. I think this is something that's really cool. We've touched on some pieces for it already, but we'll kind of go through a little bit of a review and then show you some of the cool things you can do with the stunt table. One of the pieces too with this, there is a stunt table on page 55 in the PDF. But your all class and your features you take can also grant you additional stunt effects. So keep an eye out for those custom ways to kind of flavor and mix up the turns. Biggest thing to keep in mind is you earn stunt points when you make an attack, and doubles are rolled on the dice. So if you roll two sixes on one of your die, you're going to get stunt points equal to whatever you rolled on the dragon die. The dragon die can be used for doubles. So if you lucked out and got a 6 on that dragon die for the one we talked about earlier, you'd have 6 stunt points that you have to spend this turn. So one of the biggest things on this is you get a whole stunt table, and you can do a whole bunch of crazy things with them. So you could do a lethal blow if you had 5 stunt points, add 2d6 to your attack. If you just had one stunt point, you could just do a skirmish and move yourself a little bit closer. All of these are different things to do to really make your turn feel unique, mix it up, and add a little bit more of that cinematic flair to the combats. And one of the nice things too, if you're rolling 3d6, Doubles shouldn't be like probably every turn, but they shouldn't be a rare occurrence. So there should be often a good bit of times for you to be able to bust out. At least I'd imagine that I'm not a statistician. Once a fight, at least somebody, or probably once a fight, each player should be able to bust out some stunt points and get to do something crazy, something unique, and just really mix up the battlefield with it. There are stunt abilities for out of combat as well, but those are typically going to be linked into your class or to what you've picked for those. They're going to be a little bit less common. It's typically going to be combat when you see the stunts rolled out. Yeah, so that's a quick run through of how to play the Dragon Age system. Wanted to go through, just kind of show you how to handle combat, how to handle the ability checks, and what the combat stunts do, or the stunts in general for this system. The biggest thing I'll say to keep in mind for this one, uh, Dragon Dice, very important. It does a lot of things. So just make sure you designate that, whether you're playing on a virtual tabletop or in person. And then with it, it's a straightforward system. It's one of those ones in a similar vein to 13th Age with a good balance between combat and mechanics and narrative flow. And it's one that you can really give to a table and have them pick it up quickly. But yeah, shout out in the comments some of your favorite things about the Dragon Age system or just the Green Ronin's Age system in general. Love to see what the community thinks. Also, shout outs. They are doing a Dragon Age game as well. So it should be out in the next couple months. I'm pretty hyped for that myself. So definitely check out the trailer if you haven't already. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. Like, subscribe, and keep an eye out because tomorrow we're going to be doing a thing for free TTRPG Day. And then Sunday, we are doing a Mork Borg video. Mork Borg is our next game of the month. So we'll be diving into that Sunday too. So keep an eye out for it. Yeah. Thanks for hanging out and till next time.